Am I wrong for telling my ex to stop giving my daughter lunch money? I have a daughter, Emily, 16 female, with my ex. She chose to live with my ex and his wife and kids the majority of the time because she has to share her room with her stepsister Laura, 15, at my house. My ex gives Emily $25 a week to buy lunch. Emily's and Laura's school is down the street from a lot of restaurants, so instead of buying school lunches, she leaves campus to buy herself and her friends lunch. Okay, I don't see the problem here. The problem is she sees Laura at school and won't get her anything even though she gets her friends lunch all the time. Why should she do that? I talked to Emily about it and she said it's because her friends pay her back and Laura can't. Valid point, I agree. Emily knows we can't afford to give Laura that kind of money, and I know she works part-time and gets an extra allowance from her dad, so I asked her to occasionally buy Laura lunch to make her feel better. She refused. I called her dad and hoped that as a parent he'd understand what I was trying to do, but he said Laura's feelings are not his or Emily's responsibility, and that if she wants to buy lunch off campus, she should get a part-time job like Emily. Facts. I tried to explain that Laura is in sports and she has ADHD and depression, so it would be hard for her to work, but he said that's mine and my husband's problem and hung up. What? You don't try to hold a pity party, okay? Laura came back home the other day crying because Emily came back with food from her favorite restaurant and didn't give her anything or offer to share. So I called my ex and told him that he needs to stop giving Emily lunch money and have her make her own lunches because she was hurting Laura. Why are you being so inconsiderate of your daughter's feelings? Like, I get they're both your kids, but what? He refused to listen to me and told Emily that I'm telling him not to let her go out to lunch because of Laura, and Emily hasn't spoken to me except to say that she's going to stay at her dad's full time for a while. Poor girl. Like, you cannot force relationships onto people. Like,
Story time about how a cop intimidated me into going on a date with him. This all happened 6 years ago when I had just turned 18. I had saved up a lot of money to buy a car. When I finally got my new car, I felt so independent. My dad would help me pay for the insurance and the gas, and I just had to take care of the car and make sure I drove safely. And I was a really safe driver. I never sped or made any illegal turns. In fact, I was scared of other people driving, so I was extra careful. Even though I was 18, my parents still had a curfew on me. I come from a Latin family, and they are very strict, so I followed the rules. Around this time, my parents started letting me date. I was really excited because there was this boy in high school who always wanted to date me, but I could never say yes. I told him we were finally able to date, and he got really excited. We started going to the beach and hanging out with friends, but this meant that I would have to drive long distances to the beach and back. And my biggest fear was to get pulled over. I don't know, for some reason I thought that was like the worst thing in the entire world. On my way to the beach one day, I get pulled over by this cop. I knew I wasn't speeding and I hadn't done anything illegal. I pull over and he asks me for my documents. Then he just stares at me for 30 seconds without saying anything. The first thing out of his mouth is, "Wow, you're very pretty." First thing out of his mouth is, "Wow, you're really pretty." Then he asked me if I was single. I instantly froze up and didn't even know what to say to him. Keep in mind, I had just turned 18. I felt totally vulnerable and exposed. He put his hand on my car door and leaned down towards me. This guy was really intimidating. Then he asked me a bunch of questions. Was I single again? Was I dating anyone? Was I still in high school? Did I have other friends that were pretty like me? I would laugh off his questions because I didn't even know how to respond. I was in total shock and didn't know what to do. Then he says, "Seriously though, are you single?" And since I technically was, I said yes. His demeanor totally changed. He became more aggressive. Then he said, "What do you think if I go pick you up tonight for dinner?" He points to my license and says, "You live right by me." My knees started to shake. Finally, I said, "I'm actually seeing someone." Then he just stares at my entire body up and down. He stroked my hair and asked me if I was scared. After he stroked my hair and asked me if I was scared, I said no. He could clearly see my hand shaking though. He knew that I was scared. He finally backed off and handed me my documents. He goes to his car and leaves me waiting for 13 minutes. By the way, my friends and the guy that I was seeing were waiting for me at the beach. That's when I start getting phone calls from him. I decided to answer and tell him what was going on. That's when he said to me to not get out of the car and to just say no to anything he said. That's when the cop bangs on my window. He asked me who I was talking to on the phone. I hung up the phone and told the cop that I was talking to my dad. I finally got the courage to ask him if I did anything wrong. He said no, but he saw a pretty girl, so he had to pull her over. He fully expected me to laugh at that. He finally handed me my license back and asked me when we were going to go on that date. Again, he crouched down and was right in my face. I said we could go on a date that night. I gave him a wrong phone number. Of course, I didn't show up to the date. I told my parents and we went to the nearest police station. We made a complaint, but nothing ever came of it. They essentially told him to leave me alone. Remember, he knows where I live. I feel like he probably watches and stalks me. What should I do?
You know when you have like a traumatizing experience as a kid, but now that you look back on it, it's hilarious? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I have severe stage fright, right? So, when I was a kid, listen, it stems from this fucking one moment when I was in 7th grade doing a presentation in front of everyone, right? Like, parents, teachers, students, everyone. And basically, I had to pick a research topic, and in groups of 3 with my 2 best friends, I had to present it to the whole school by the end of the year, right? And the night before, I show it to my mom, and I was like, oh, I decided the Bermuda Triangle because I watched the TV show, whatever. And my mom reads it, and she was just like, this is trash. So she makes me a new one that I have never seen while I was asleep, Queen Loki. And then she writes me like a deck of cards, a cue card, so I can read them, right? And she writes for my friends too. She told me, your friends are gonna read 2 slides, you're gonna read 28, okay? And I was like, fuck me. So I go on stage, and I'm standing on stage, and like, I'm like starting to read the cue cards, right? And like, my friend reads the first one, I read the second one, and then when it comes to the third one, my friend is supposed to read it, but I had the cue card. So it fucked me up, like it confused me. And then I like skipped 2 by accident, and then I lost where I was, and I dropped them. And I was like, fuck. And then I look at the crowd, and I see my mom, and my mom's looking at me, and she's like, oh, it's fine. And I was like, oh, she wants me to go away. So I start walking off stage. She's like, psst, what the fuck are you doing? And I was like, you told me to leave stage. She was like, no, I told you to look at the fucking PowerPoint. What are you doing? I was like, right, okay. So I go back there, and I pick up all the cards, and now they're out of order because they're not fucking numbered. So I'm like looking at all of them, and I'm like, okay, I'll just read the first one. There are 5 devils under the triangle, and they're formed in a triangle formation, and they suck all the ships down there. And then I skip to the next one, and it's like, the electromagnetic field takes down all the airplanes. What the fuck? And I was just so confused, and my mom is looking at me, and she was like, and then I was like freaking out, and I look at my mom, and I'm like, and I'm like fully freaking out, and she's like, bitch, look at the fucking PowerPoint. And I was like, you're right. I just started looking at the PowerPoint and started reading off of it. And for some reason, no one like questioned it, and everyone was just die laughing. Like, that was so miserable for me, because I was like, why is everyone laughing at me? But I was like, now, think about it. It's this like 12-year-old that's fully freaking out on stage and just reading about devils or whatever. Like, what the fuck is he on? And I didn't know what I was on either, because it's my mom's words and not mine, and it's a random theory. Anyways, I finished, and then the second I was done, I run to the bathroom and start crying. Let me be, I was a kid. And then I go back after I hear like the applause for the next presentation, which was the last one, and now they're gonna announce the winners, right? So I'm sitting in, next to my mom, and I'm like, fuck. And they read the announcement, like, who's winning, and it's me and my group. So I immediately go, huh? And my mom pinches me because she's like, bitch, shut up. So she pinches me, but she pinched me so much that I stood up, and I was like, thank you so much. And then I sat down, and I was like, and then threw up everywhere. But it's fine. We don't talk about the throw up part. I got a certificate for it though. Isn't that so cute?
I'm 15 years old. I have a stepsister who is a couple years older than me, and she's really seriously disabled. I'm not sure what's wrong with her because no one ever wants to discuss it with me, but she's nonverbal, breaks her bones a lot, and has severe epilepsy and will have many fitting episodes. She also doesn't understand stuff. That's probably the easiest way to put it. She's just a human body with nothing inside. She's my stepmom's daughter. My stepmom married my dad 3 years ago, and they dated only for a year before that. I don't know my stepmom very well, and I don't get along with her. We're respectful to each other, but I'm basically living with strangers because she's so busy with her daughter and my dad. I'm always on my own, and I used to hate it, but now I'm used to it. Ever since they moved in to live with us, life changed drastically for me because all the care now revolves around my stepsister. That's fine, I get it. Both my stepmom and dad ask me to do things with my stepsister that I don't want to do and I resent doing. Stuff like staying home when I want to go to the mall with my friends. They're disappointed that I don't get her anything for her birthday with my very limited funds, etc. My birth mom passed away when I was small, so I can't go stay anywhere else, and all in all, I'm just a lot more angry than I used to be because they seem really disappointed whenever I don't want to do anything for her. Even stuff like feeding her, like, I don't want to sit there feeding her banana pudding and wiping her drool. I didn't ask for this. Anyway, she recently fell a few days ago and had a seizure for 8 minutes. She was taken to the hospital and the doctors want to keep her there and look after her. I don't want to go and visit her. I remember seeing my mom in the hospital before she died, and I just hate hospitals and I sort of hate my stepsister, and I don't want to go visit someone who doesn't even know that I'm there. My stepmom is really upset with me, and so is my dad. They haven't yelled at me or anything, but they are both being super cold towards me because I don't want to visit. My grandma, who lives in Canada, called me up out of the blue and told me that it was okay and I don't need to force myself to go to the hospital, so I'm assuming that my dad told her that I'm refusing to go. He keeps pleading with me, but I keep telling him that I'm not doing it. I told him that hospitals remind me of mom, and he got even more upset and said that my stepsister might die and I need to stop being so selfish towards my stepmom. Half of my friends think that I should go, and the other half think that I'm justified in saying no. Am I the asshole because I refuse to go visit my special needs sister in the hospital even though she's very sick? This is why you should always keep an eye on your kids. I work for a research facility which funds clinics handling patients for our area of expertise. To celebrate our first completely funded sites, we decided to create t-shirts to commemorate our success. I was tasked to design tees and have them printed and produced for our next conference. I secured a local printer to produce the shirts, and when they were completed, I went to the printers to pick them up. When I got there and produced my invoice, they needed to prepare and wrap them, which would take a few minutes, and I could wait in the lobby. While waiting, a woman and her son, which was around 5, came in for her order for a family reunion. She barely paid attention to the staff and was told to wait. She got on her phone, pretty much ignoring her son who was running all around the lobby, screaming to the top of his lungs. He then decided to run behind the counter towards the back where the printing machines were. The counter clerk tried to get the woman's attention, but she just ignored the clerk and continued to talk on her phone. The clerk finally got the kid back into the lobby, but she was called back to pick up my package. The kid took this as a chance to shoot behind the counter and went running into the back. I thought that one of the staff would catch him, but they were swamped with orders and just didn't see him run past. By the time that someone spotted him, it was too late. There was a loud, high-pitched screaming and crying, and there was loud commotion, and it appeared everyone was screaming, except the mother, who was still on her phone, oblivious to the chaos from the back. That's when another staff member came out carrying the crying kid and holding a bloody towel around his hand and screaming to the receptionist to call 911. Only then does the mother turn around and see her son and then scream at the staff member, "What did you do to my son?" The staff member stated that somehow the kid got to the back, ran up to one of the working machines and stuck his hand between the hot blades, and it sliced off one of his fingers. The mom started screaming and berating them, threatening to sue them while ignoring her son who was still in the staff member's arms who was trying to stop the bleeding. That's when I, a nurse, came up and assessed the situation and got something to slow down the bleeding to try and save the mostly severed finger. As the ambulance pulled up, the mom was actually still on the phone telling whoever that she was talking to what happened to her son, and she still hadn't checked or even touched her son. The staff member transferred the boy to the EMTs and they came in the ambulance and took him to the hospital. The asshole mom actually waited and demanded her package before she even attempted to follow the ambulance to the hospital. A month later, when I went back to the printers for another order of teas, I had to ask if they ever heard what happened to the little boy. Unfortunately, he did end up losing his finger. The mom was charged with neglect due to testimony by the staff of the shop. I didn't find out much more after that, but I hope that the mother did not regain custody of that poor kid.
Am I the asshole for cussing at a lady at the park? I, 14 male,